In this video, I'm going to describe how to read text contents from a file on the local disk. For this demonstration, I'll use an application named readingtext.mxml from the Chapter 04 Begin project. If you're following along with the exercises, open the file in FlexBuilder now. This is a very simple beginning application. It has an empty function named readText and a button control whose click event results in calling the function. I'll expand my editor to full screen so we can see as much code as possible. To read text from a file on disk, you need two objects, a file object that points to the file, and a file stream object that opens and reads its contents. Start by declaring a variable named f, data typed as a file. Get its location using this syntax, file.applicationdirectory.resolvepath, and then pass in this location, assets/a-textfile.txt. Next, create a file stream object. Declare another variable named fs, set its data type as filestream, and instantiate it using the filestream class's noArguments constructor. The file class's constructor method does not receive any arguments. You simply instantiate it, and then you connect it up to the file object using one of two methods, either open or open async. As with all file manipulation functions, you can read the contents from a file either synchronously or asynchronously. I'll be working synchronously in this exercise, but if you're working with a very large file, you may need to use the asynchronous version to make sure that you don't suspend the main application thread while the file reading process is happening. To open the file synchronously, call the FileStream object's open method and pass in two arguments, a reference to the file you want to open, and then a mode value. The file mode argument is a string value. There are four constants you can use that are members of the class FileMode. Their values are append, read, update, and write. If you're just getting a value out of the file, use the read mode. Now the file is open for reading. Now declare a variable typed as a string that will receive the value from the file. I'll name this variable simply txt, data type it as a string, and then you'll call a method of the FileStream object named readUTF-bytes. There are actually two methods that are available named readUTF and readUTF-bytes. The readUTF method requires a particular end-of-file marker at the end of the file, which isn't always present. The readUTF-bytes method is a bit more reliable, and it works like this. You call the FileStream's readUTF-bytes method, and you pass in a length value which you read dynamically using the FileStream object's bytes_available property. This is an unsigned integer value that tells you how many bytes or characters there are in the file. Close the method call, and now the data has been returned to the text variable. Finally, and very important, you should always explicitly close the file stream when you're done with it. This ensures that any of the application's file locks have been removed. Now we have the value from the text file in the txt variable. I'll use the alert class and display the results by calling alert.show. I'll pass in the value of the text property, and then in the second argument, the title of the pop-up window, a value of read from file. That's all the code. Let's review the steps. First, you create a file object pointing to the file you want to read. Then you create a file stream object. You use the file stream object to open the file, working either synchronously or asynchronously. I'm using synchronous operations here, and indicate what mode you want to open the file in. I've indicated here that I'm opening it in read mode. Next, you call the readUTF-bytes method and pass in the FileStream object's bytes_available property. That returns the value from the text file into the string variable. Then you explicitly close the file stream, and then you have a value that you can work with. I'll run the application to test this. I'll click the button, and you'll see the contents of the text file are read and displayed. If you're working with an XML file, the steps are very similar, but you also then take the string value that retrieved from the XML contents and you pass it into an XML object. I have another couple of files in the source area that I can work with. Here's a file named contacts.xml, which contains 1,000 rows of XML formatted data. I'm going to change the contents of this file like this. First of all, I'll change the name of the file I'm reading from a textfile.txt to simply contacts.xml. The next set of steps are exactly the same. I create the file stream, open the file, read its contents, and save it all as a string. Then, once I have the XML formatted text as a string, I can parse it by passing it into the constructor method of a new XML object. I'll create a variable named contacts.xml, data typed as an XML object, and I'll construct it using new XML, and I'll pass in the text value. This time, I don't want to use the alert class to display the contents of the file, so I'm going to comment that out and then put a breakpoint on the last line of the function. When I reach the breakpoint, that will suspend the application, and I'll be able to inspect this XML object. I'll save the changes, and this time I'll run the application in debug mode. When the application opens, I'll click the Read File button. In the background, FlexBuilder presents a message asking me to switch to the debugging perspective. I'll accept the prompt. I'll double-click the Variables tab to inspect my data, and then take a look at Contacts.xml. It may take a few seconds for this to open on your system, depending on how fast your system is, how much memory, how much resources you have. But after the data has been parsed, you should see that you can inspect the data and drill down through its contents in the Variables view. Now I'll restore the Variables view and terminate the debugging session. So that's a look at how to read text files into memory. You use a file object and a file stream object. You read the value into a string-based variable, making sure you've closed the file stream when you're done. And then if you have simple text, you can simply display it to the user or do anything else you want with it. Or if you have XML formatted text, you can use the XML object to parse the data and make it available through E4X expressions. Now, if you're not familiar with E4X, which is known as ECMAScript for XML, it's a great technology to get to know, and you can check out the demonstrations of using E4X in the other videos about Flex 3, Flex 3 Beyond the Basics, and Flex 3 Essential Training.